Good morning. This is a courtesy announcement that we will be going live with the meeting on YouTube and on the web. Thank you very much.
Good morning, Member Fisk. Would you like to do a mic check?
Good morning. I'd like to, Jill, thanks for checking everybody's mic. Could you make me a co-host, please?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you. And Frank, and I'm not sure who's doing this, but for the public comment, the opening public comment today, we'll do 2 minutes, and then throughout the meeting, 2 as well.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I'm fighting the urge to say we're all in our places with bright, shiny faces, but I may say it anyway. We have a really interesting meeting today. And let me I'm gonna just go through the agenda as people start to join us. We're gonna call the meeting to order. We'll go to public comment. I don't think we have, we're just gonna approve minutes on our consent calendar. And then we have 2 really great discussions today. And I really wanna encourage people to weigh in. We're gonna do the presentations in total, so we won't be interrupting the presenters, but these are pretty meaty conversations. So I hope we get a lot of input and a lot of your shared feedback. And we're giving folks just a minute more to join on. And great. So we're going to go ahead and begin our meeting. And what we'll do is we'll begin with a roll call, then we'll go to public comment, then to our consent calendar. So I'm going to ask folks if you could unmute yourselves so that the roll call goes a little quicker, would be great.
Thank you very much. Chairperson Chavez.
Here.
Co-chairperson Smith.
Here.
Thank you very much. Let's see. Commissioner Tomalinas is not present. Commissioner Judge Ryan is not present at the moment.
She is present.
Oh, she is, excuse me.
Sorry. That's all right.
Oh, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
My apologies. Commissioner Wapinski.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Garnett. Commissioner Laura Garnett. Okay, we'll come back. Commissioner Hardy.
Here.
Thank you very much.
Yes.
Commissioner Dr. Cody.
Hi,
Dr.
I'm
Cody?
Rhonda McClinton Brown. I'm here on behalf of Sarah Cody.
Great, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I have noted that. Commissioner Esparza.
Here.
Thank you very much, council members. Commissioner O'Neill.
Here.
Thank you. And we see Commissioner Silver here as well. Thank you very much.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Rosen. Commissioner D.A. Rosen.
This is David Angel. I'm standing in for the district attorney.
Great, thank you very much, Mr. Angel. Appreciate it. We have a new commissioner, Pat Nicolai. Chief Nicolai.
I'm here.
Great, thank you very much. Commissioner Dan Winter. Okay. See Commissioner Minicochi.
Here.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Shing. Okay. Commissioner Terrell.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Mills.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Dewan. Or Commissioner Olmos. Okay, welcome back. Commissioner Gaxiola.
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisk.
Here.
Thank you. And you're in place of Commissioner Reagan today? Okay. Commissioner Marquez? We have Commissioner Marquez.
Yes, here.
Great, thank you very much. And Commissioner Hersig? Okay, Commissioner O'Brien?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Amador Lebeau?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Trinidad? Okay, Commissioner Williams? Commissioner Tony Williams? Okay, Commissioner David Robinson? Okay, Commissioner Clifford?
Which one?
Christine Clifford.
Christine is here.
Great, thank you very much.
Yes.
And Commissioner Judge Manley?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Healy? Okay, Commissioner Piramatam? Commissioner Crocker Cook? Commissioner Mukuyama? Commissioner Bajeni?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Narayan? Thank you. Commissioner Garcia?
Dave Tyndall here for Chief Eddie Garcia.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Halcombe?
Present.
Thank you. Commissioner Amanda Clifford?
Here.
Thank you. Commissioner Todd Kendrick?
Here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your patience. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We are now going to go to public comment and then to approving the consent calendar. All right, so we'll go to Scott.
The next speaker is Scott. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Scott Largent. On my little YouTube thing here, when meetings pop up, I've noticed that Santa Cruz County, well, a lot of our sister counties and in the state have started to open up their supervisor chambers. They've started to open up the city council chambers. You know, they're socially distancing people. They're keeping things clean. I really think it's just time to go to get back to work. And I think that really is the case with behavioral health. I am shocked that they are still shut down on Santa Clara Street. Their parking lot is now turning into a third world country with patients that need help. They need care. They need, you know, all of the above. Why is everybody so terrified to go help these people? And why are we not reopening certain parts of our government to do a better job of helping people? I don't understand that. Target's open, Home Depot's open. Those places are just thousands and thousands of people coming in and out. These are things I just don't understand. I have trials starting. Oh, bless you, whoever sneezed. She still have manners in this world. What's ending up happening this coming week is my trial is starting. This will be the third time around. This is the civil machination from the city of San Jose for me exercising my democratic values and standing up for my property. And, you know, it's a real scam here in Santa Clara County. The public defender's office, they should have given me legal advice on how to file a writ and how to properly fight the city after they failed my criminal defense. It's really sad. I'm one person, and that a city would try to do something like this, and that you, Jeff Rosen, would actually continue to try to go after me for years for me making fun of your metrosexual details and the fact that you fake tan. I thought it was funny. Victorious thought it was funny. It was a joke, but prosecution over jokes is bad.
Thank you. I don't see any more public speakers, and I wanted to acknowledge that Cora Tomalinas has just joined us for the clerk. What I'd like to do is we're going to go to item 4, and this is a consent calendar. And believe it or not, it requires a roll call vote. So if folks, again, could just, I know, Aaron, I feel the same way. Can we just do this by, you know, I forgot what the expression is, but anyway, if we could, we're going to ask people to take their mics off of mute, and we're going to ask for a roll call vote on the consent calendar, which is really just our minutes. So Frank?
Madam Chair, do we have a motion second?
Oh, what? Yes, may we have a motion? So we have
I
a
move
motion
to,
from Miguel.
It's Judge Manley. I move to approve the minutes.
So we have Judge Manley is a motion, Miguel
I'll second.
Marquez is a second, and we're going to do a roll call vote. Welcome, Key.
Thank you very much. Chairperson Chavez,
Yes.
Co-Chairperson Smith, Co-Chairperson Smith. Okay, we'll-
Yes, yes.
Thank you
Sorry,
very
I was
much.
double muted.
No problem. Thank you very much, Commissioner Tomalinas. Commissioner Tomalinas, are you able to unmute? Okay, we'll come back. Commissioner Judge Ryan,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Wapansky,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Garnett. Okay, we'll come back. Commissioner Hardy,
Yes.
thank you. And Commissioner McClinton Brown,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Esparza,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner O'Neill,
Yes.
thank you. And Commissioner Silver,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Angel,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Nicolai,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Winter, Commissioner Manicaci, Commissioner Manicaci. We'll come back. Commissioner Shing, Commissioner Terrell,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Mills,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Dewan,
Yes.
thank you. Commissioner Olmos, Commissioner Gaxiola,
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Fisk.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Reagan. Commissioner Marquez.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Herseg. Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Amador Lebeau.
Staying, I was absent.
Noted. Thank you. Commissioner Trinidad. Okay. Commissioner Williams. Commissioner Robinson. Commissioner Christine Clifford.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Judge Manley. Okay, I know he moved just a moment ago. Commissioner Lee.
Staying, I was also not present at the last meeting.
Great, thank you. Has been noted. Commissioner Pirumatam. Commissioner Crocker Cook. Commissioner Mukuyama. Commissioner
Frank, we just lost you.
Commissioner
Commissioner who?
Yes.
Vujani, my apologies. Okay. Great.
Yes, I could hear you. No problem. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Commissioner Narayan. Commissioner Garcia is not present. Commissioner Knopf. Commissioner Halcombe.
Yes.
Thank you. Commissioner Amanda Clifford.
Yes.
Thank you. And Commissioner Kendrick.
Yes.
Thank you very much. All right, so that passes with a majority. Let's not do that again today. So we're going to move on to item 4. And so let me just talk a little bit about what we're doing here. This is a very meaty presentation, so I'm going to ask folks if you wouldn't mind holding your questions unless there's something that you need clarification for to understand the subject matter. And then if you can, does everybody know how to use their blue hands? Yeah, okay, we're good. And if you can't figure it out, just turn your screen on and wave like crazy and we'll get you, but it would be good if we could try the blue hands. And so this is, we have multiple presenters on this, and this is an opportunity for us to better understand the services that we have in place. And so we're going to ask to better understand what those are, what the utilization of those services are. And this is really, I just want to say this came from a discussion that we've had on an ongoing basis just to better understand the gaps in services. So with that, I'm going to, Sherry, are you the ringleader on this one?
I will be, Supervisor.
Oh, okay, Miguel, take us away.
Great, thank you. So good morning, Supervisor, Sheriff Smith, and members of the Reentry Network. As noted, we have a comprehensive presentation today with multiple presenters, so I will go quickly through the first 10 slides. And I think Melanie Jimenez Perez is going to put the slides up. Oh, I'm getting a text. I'm sorry. It turns out Sherry has 4A, so Sherry is first. So Sherry, can I turn it over to you for 4A, and then I will go at the appropriate time. My apologies.
Sure, no problem.
You had your Wheaties. Go ahead, Sherry.
Yeah.
Good morning, President Chavez and members of the commission. Sherry Terrell with Behavioral Health. We don't have a formal PowerPoint presentation, but I thought I could walk through just some of the highlights from the report and then open to questions. And we have several of our partners available here during the meeting to speak to the different areas of our report. In our report, we wanted to highlight the 3 different continuums of care that come together really to support individuals that we serve. We highlighted.
Sherry, you do have a PowerPoint in the packet.
Yes, I mean we can pull that up. Basically, the PowerPoint highlights the 3 different continuums of care. So we can pull that up, but I am not sure if.
Yeah, I think we should. I mean, I think if we have people talking for 15 or 20 minutes of PowerPoint's the least we can do to keep them focused. So yeah, thank you.
Okay, great. So what we wanted to highlight in our presentation are the 3 different continuums and how we have been working together to ensure that our coordinated efforts are really working in concert to be able to serve the clients. So I'm actually going to go ahead and invite Gabby Olivares to walk us through briefly the behavioral health services continuum of care.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
So this is Gabby Olivares. I'm the Division Director of Criminal Justice Services. So I just wanted to first start off saying that in 2016, the Behavioral Health Services Department presented the continuum before you, which identified a range of low to high to medium services. Since the inception of the continuum, several services have been added. The continuum has offered a full array of services that allows clients to access services based on their level of care need. Both mental health and substance use needs are addressed to support successful integration into the community. So I just quickly wanted to point out that what we have recently added, if you look into our intensive bubble, so everything that we presented in 2016 stands as is. But what we've added is in our intensive bubble, we've added our forensic community assertive treatment team. And what we've found is that this population really does well when services are provided into community. We've also added additional substance use treatment services because our clients, 80% of our clients have co-occurring disorders. So we've added a lot of intensive and recovery residents to address those needs. The next bubble that I want to turn your attention to is our in custody, our STEPS program. We have people that work in custody to identify and screen individuals that have co-occurring mental health and substance use disorders. And you know, what's really nice about this team is that they will provide the screening and do a warm handoff to the treatment provider. So I just lastly want to add that the continuum of care depicted before you has strongly focused on mental health and substance use disorders and is a guide in the efforts to establishing public safety and a justice continuum of service, in that it serves as the core of a holistic continuum that expands clinical interventions. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabby. So I think we'll go to the next slide. And I'll turn it over to Javier Aguirre, who can walk us through the Office of Reentry Services continuum.
Good morning, members of the Reentry Network Governance. So this continuum of care, you might have seen it back in April of 2019, where after we had established, or after the Reentry Network had approved our strategic plan, there was a direction to look at behavioral health continuum of care and design it just based on client service needs, and then what are the clients seeking services. And most importantly, what are some of the desired outcomes of this continuum of services? In this stages of continuum of services, we have what's called immediate needs. So most importantly, food assistance, CalFresh, general assistance. So that's something that many of our clients seek when they arrive at the reentry center. The next is health services. So our primary goal is to ensure every reentry client that comes to the reentry center is enrolled in Medi-Cal. Most importantly, also those that are in custody through AB 720, rehab officers along with SSA eligibility workers ensure that inmates are enrolled in Medi-Cal. And then those that are seeking behavioral health services either already begin that service or that referral in custody, or when they come to the reentry center, they request a screening and assessment for behavioral health services. The next bubble is our social economic supports. So many of our clients are requesting employment, education services, record expungement, faith-based services. So we link them to those type of services. And that's the foundation in terms of what our clients need to sustain themselves as they move forward in their journey to custody into their communities. And then lastly is the case management or client navigation. I believe this is the glue that maintains our clients in terms of navigation. You know, I was reminded that when someone is in custody, most of all their needs are met. They have primary care, they have a place to stay, some housing. They also have some program services. But once they come out, it may be difficult for those that might have been in prison for 20 plus years to navigate the county system. So having case managers, counselors, peer mentors, service navigators, it's so important to support their navigation to a very complex system of care. Many of us have our own health insurance, so sometimes it's very difficult to follow up with phone calls and so forth. So peer mentors, community workers are essential to assist our clients. And then most importantly, supervision. So many of our clients are under parole, probation, or CASU under the sheriff's supervision. And so it's critical that case managers, counselors, peer support community workers work with those departments to ensure clients are receiving the services that they require. Based on this continuum of care, we look at how can we measure success, and that's preventing crime, reducing recidivism rates, expanding resource offerings, increasing rates of completion, and increasing service linkages. So this committee, along with the Board of Supervisors, approves our strategic plan, and part of that plan is those measurements. So we already have 1 year worth of data and statistics that we will present to PSJC in October, and hopefully re-entry in October as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Javier. We're going to go ahead and move next to the Office Board of Housing, and we have Consuelo Hernandez walk us through that continuum.
Good morning. Consuelo Hernandez here, Acting Director. This image is a snapshot of one of our programs, and our continuum is inclusive of permanent supportive housing, rapid rehousing, transitional housing, interim housing, and shelter. We work particularly closely with Javier and his team with the Reentry Center. And just to walk you through, our model is individuals are assessed and placed in the community queue. And we have an internal team that will focus on finding clients that either don't come through the Reentry Center or in the community, and then they are placed into a program. That housing placement program is a conjunction of services plus the housing resource, whether that is in a building that the county is currently funding or a regular unit in the marketplace. Sorry. And when we look at our strategy and our continuum of when we start to think about the level of service and the level of care for the individuals, our ultimate goal is housing retention and pairing that with the necessary supportive services. So this image with the circle will show how we leverage our partnership with behavioral health and the Reentry Center and others in the county to provide the critical medical needs of the client. And one of the great things about our system is it's client-centered, client-based. So while we have this model of care that takes these different elements of the county and services, it is tailored to that individual household. A plan is developed for each, and they have access to substance treatment, specialty mental health, housing case management, whether that's intensive or light, depending on the household needs. The ultimate goal is for the individual to transition in the unit to feel like they are getting better, they are recovering, and that they have the necessary resources either directly through an Office of Supportive Housing case manager or through a service that we use with one of our partners, again, in conjunction with the Reentry Center. And Sherry, I think the other slide is missing from the presentation, but I'm happy to share with the commission later that shows the actual workflow, not just within the permanent supportive housing, but it's an extension of our system that shows the different housing interventions depending on the individual's VI SPDAT score and what type of treatment that they need. This is just one example of one of our programs. If the household meets the criteria for a permanent supportive housing placement, how they would eventually come into the queue, get assessed, placed, and housed, and the services that they would be receiving. And most recently, the discussions that we've been having with behavioral health and Javier at the Reentry Center is how our three systems can better align and better connect, and maybe show the continuum overlapping each other and where the junctions are. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Consuelo, Javier, and Gabby for sharing the three continuums. I think, as we look at the way in which our systems interface and the coordination needed to most effectively serve our clients, I think there have continued to be questions about where we have flexibility to be more responsive in our services and approach. And so, one of the things that we're looking at within behavioral health is continuing to assess the level of needs of all of the adults and older adults that we serve in our system of care, and determining the extent to which those needs are currently being met with the way in which our services are currently organized. Some of the gaps that I think we can continue to identify can be addressed through a twofold approach. One being reviewing and creating flexibility between the divisions within our adult and older adult behavioral health system. So thinking more along the lines of, we serve adults and older adults. We have programs for criminal justice and jail diversion involved individuals. We have our supportive housing services and substance use treatment. And really all of those services are needed to be coordinated in order to most efficiently and effectively serve the clients. So what we're looking at would be identifying those gaps and then really figuring out how to better align and coordinate our efforts. Secondly, our approach would be to look at future procurement and contracting strategies that could consider flexibility to include a more comprehensive approach to serve all adults and older adults with mental health and or substance use disorders, with more specific attention paid to ensuring that housing support is provided where needed, while still continuing to provide mental health, substance use treatment, ongoing case management, rehabilitation services, and medication support when needed. So with that, I think we can open to questions from the group. Thank you.
Great. What I'm going to do is I'm first going to go to public comment, and then I'll come back to the committee. And so if we could take Scott and then come back to the committee. And if folks can raise their blue hands, I will come right to you.
The next speaker is Scott Largent. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Good morning, everyone. Scott Largent. This is just frustrating to see, and I'm not somebody that just sits here and constantly complains. I guess I am. I talk to all these people. I'm not afraid to go up to them. Why are you? You guys make everything seem like it's a-okay, and it's really not when you walk out of that jail or you walk over near the reentry network. And here's the thing: the homeless and mentally ill that are turned away there are living in front of that old city hall. They're living on the side of the DA's office. They're living behind the county buildings. And then they make it down to Spring Street, down to the FAA crash zone down there. which is Lord of the Flies. We're not giving people chances. And then eventually what happens? They start committing more felonies, and then they're able to tap into the resources of AB 109. That's what I don't understand. Why can't you people get creative with it? Why can't you go find private donors in Santa Clara County to start helping people? Why are you not feeding people out in front of the public defender's office, Damon? Why are you not helping the people that are coming into your lobby rather than just letting them use the bathroom? The county could do more out in front. You know, I don't understand. And in Santa Clara County, we have one restroom when you walk into that building that has one toilet and 2 sinks. You can't socially distance in there. And that's where you send most of the mentally ill and homeless to use the restrooms after 5 o'clock. It's disgusting. I don't understand. Get portable showers, get portable bathrooms, set up that stuff. Don't just give it to the people that commit felonies or re-enter our system. It should be for all. And I don't understand it. And Sumi Rose, that really nice old elderly woman that got railroaded by our system, she lives on the side of City Hall. She goes to the reentry network every single day asking for help. Same within your lobby, Damon. Why can't you people get creative to help that woman? She's dying on the side of that building over there.
Thank you, Scott. We're going to go back to the group, and I'm going to hold on one second. So what I'm going to do is I see Wes. I'm going to go to Christine Clifford, Judge Manley, and then to Wes Mukiyama. All right, Christine.
I guess my question is for Director Oliveras about the STEPS program, the in-custody co-occurring mental health and substance abuse situation. I'm wondering, she talked about a screening. I'd like to know more about what that screening is, who gives that screening, where it's given, when it's given. And given our excitement about being able to put mobile crisis units out on the street, could this be something that could be determined before a person is taken into custody so that they weren't ever in custody, the handoff is to behavioral and mental health?
Morning. So the screening, actually, it's done in the jail, but right now, because we aren't able to access the jail, the STEP program is actually doing a phone screening over the telephone to identify mental health and substance needs. So once the need is identified, the consumer, there's coordination that happens where a program is identified where the consumer can actually access treatment services. The provider connects via letter, again, because we can't go into the jails right now, informing the consumer of the services and what we can offer to them. Then the coordination happens with admin booking, where the person is actually released to the program. And so a warm handoff happens. And also, just to address your question in regards to, before individuals are arrested, if interventions can perhaps happen before that occurs. So the mental health triage unit at the sobering station, that is exactly what they do, is they will screen, assess for mental health and substance use disorders and connect people in lieu of going into the jail, they connect them into treatment services.
Christine?
Yeah, could you tell me more about what the screening consists of and who gives it?
Sure. So we ask, what is your presenting problem? Have you ever been in behavioral health services? Can you tell me what you're experiencing today? Are you anxious? Are you nervous? From your perspective, what's going on? How can we help you? Here's the needs that you've identified. We have the ASAM criteria, which looks at substance, mental health. So it's basically client report out of what symptoms they're experiencing and us looking through our data files. Have we ever served you? Do you have any treatment history with us? And here's where we're recommending that you go to outpatient. We're recommending that you go to a residential setting. Are you open to our recommendation? And if yes, we will send you a letter and start coordinating your discharge to those treatment services. And if you're on medications, ensuring that you have your medications readily available so you can access services.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Judge Manley? Judge Manley, you're on mute. And I
Okay,
do, Cora,
thank you.
I'll add you to the queue.
Thank you. Two quick questions. One to Javier. Javier, I have always been a strong supporter of the qualifying individuals for Medi-Cal and making sure they have Medi-Cal when they're in custody. What I wanted to ask you is this. One of the frustrations we have here in releasing people into treatment is we have such a fluid society in California. Often individuals will have Medi-Cal in another county. And the delay in transferring the Medi-Cal to Santa Clara County, it means that the defendant stays in jail, in my view, for far too long. And the reason is because the providers here in our county under behavioral health will not accept a client unless they are on Medi-Cal. What is being done to speed the, if anything, and I realize it's not your responsibility, but I would just like to know what is being done to speed that process up, because I can assure you that 2 years ago, it was much faster when I raised this issue with the state. And the state kept repeatedly telling me that it is easily done, but I have found that not to be the case. Could you comment?
Yes, so 2 comments, and then I'll ask Gabby to also add on to the behavioral health role. But in terms of, so folks that are on the JAC list that are going to be triaged to CAPS, custody health, working with the sheriff's rehab officers and SSA in custody, identified those that have out-of-county health insurance or out-of-county Medi-Cal. So then they start working with SSA eligibility workers to figure out what the next steps are. And so we now have a point person at SSA that our team can send that information to that staff. And then behavioral health has a healthcare program manager that also oversees the JAC list CAPS. So they're also working with SSA in the state to alleviate that issue. But I do agree with you, that has been an issue. We try to work on it case by case, but as long as it comes to the process or through a multidisciplinary team, we could identify that and try to resolve that.
All right, thank you. Could I ask one question of Office of Supportive Housing, and I don't know who would respond to this, but one of the issues that has concerned me for a long time is that using the VSPID and the policies that are in place, in my view, we now presently give preferences for supportive housing to veterans. As I have a large veterans treatment court, I have no problem generally in placing them in housing. What I want to know is this: why do we not give a priority to mentally ill offenders who are in custody, homeless? These are the most vulnerable individuals who are placed out into the community. I don't want to see them in the streets. They should be in housing. Why are they not given a priority? Is that a possibility? Is it something that we should consider? Or is it something that is we cannot change at all? By we, I'm talking about the Board of Supervisors.
Yeah, I heard you, Judge Manley. I'm going to let Consuelo give you her perspective, and then I'll respond with a perspective of my own. Go ahead, Consuelo.
Thank you, Board President Chavez. Great question, Judge Manley. We are always looking to see where there are areas of improvement in our system. We did run a couple of pilot programs during the COVID crisis and the JAC list in conjunction with Javier and his team. and are working now with Gabby Behavioral Health to look at the assessment tool that she mentioned and how that assessment tool is linked with our, or can be better coordinated with our assessment tool, which is required by the federal government. And we do have a working group now that's meeting monthly to go over changes to that VI SPDAT score and assessment, whether the questions need to change, and then pairing the way that we administer our justice programs so that they can factor in the most vulnerable in the way that you've characterized them. So I would say that it is something worth exploring and looking into, and there is a process by which we can do that. And part of the next phase of the expansion of our supportive housing system is looking at these critical subpopulations within the system that need a different level of care and different attention. And then how do we implement the policies and procedures that will allow us to take different criteria in mind when thinking about subpopulations like in the justice system. I'll give you one other example. We have a number of developments in the pipeline for seniors, but the tax credit requirements say that in order to qualify as a senior project, households have to be 62 years or older. But when we look at the functional age of our homeless population, even though chronologically they might be 50, from a health perspective, they are closer to that 62 number. And so how do we change our policies? How do we better target our housing programs to actually address the gap in the system in that way? So to make an easier question or easier answer for you, I should say, is it is something that is worth exploring and something that we're happy to work on and take back to Miguel and the administration about how we might implement something like that.
Yeah.
And I'll just add that one of the requests that I've made of the staff is to look at a vulnerability index instead of simply looking at, not simply, the VDAT SPDAT had a lot of thought that went into it, but really looking at a vulnerability index, because it is both people who are seriously mentally ill, but we also have folks who are maybe more at risk for being victimized on the street as well. You know, that could be women, it could be any number of groups. So I'm interested in a vulnerability index as well. And then the last thing that I'll just add, one request that I'm going to make at the end of this report is that we have a much better sense of how many people we're dealing with and how many people we are knowingly putting out on the street. Because I think until we're very honest about what those numbers are, it impedes our ability to respond with the kind of both rigor, but also precision that we intended when we started this whole venture of the county playing a bigger leadership role in housing the homeless. So, which is a bigger part of the, you know, the broader work that we're doing. All right, so I'm going to go to Wes, then to Aaron O'Brien, Pablo, and then to Cora Tomalinas. All right, Wes, there you go.
I just have a question. You may have talked about this in previous meetings, or you may have talked about it earlier when I wasn't here, but I just want to wonder, what are you doing about coronavirus or COVID? I'm assuming that you have tested them before they're released. And if they are positive, what do you do? And then when they go out on the streets or wherever they go, you have follow-up testing. I think this is an opportunity where we need to make sure that because Scott Largent said that they go out and they hide behind the county building, and they're very vulnerable to get the virus again. So is there a process there? Maybe Gabby can answer that, or anybody on the group can answer, but I think public health needs to be involved in this.
So West, are you talking about when people release out of custody?
Yes.
So we're coordinating testing for everybody that is leaving the jail and accessing behavioral health services. We coordinate a test with everyone. We send a list. We ask for 72 hours that the coordination starts to test everybody. The other thing that we're doing also is we're having VMC go to our residential sites. We just started that last week, and they're actually testing the consumers on site. And the next thing that we will be doing is we'll be training staff in-house to start administering the testing as well. So everybody that we're placing is being tested from the jail.
So if they're positive at 72 hours before they're released, what happens?
So the isolation starts in custody, and then there's communication with the provider and the custody health nurse to discuss what's the plan. Are they going to stay in 2 weeks? Are we going to discharge them into motel? And
2 weeks, or
I'm sorry?
will they stay in jail for 2 more weeks? Or what?
It depends on symptomology, how they're doing, how, it depends on the nursing, when they're tested again. And also, do we have a safe place to place them in community? And so
Okay,
many
but-
of these folks have gone, they've gone to hotels and they have close supervision from our teams.
If they go out on the street, just out on the street, do you give them follow-up regulation? I mean,
Well, we coordinate
instructions?
care, and Office of Supportive Housing can probably better speak to this, but we coordinate care so that they don't go to the streets. Everything is done in a coordination fashion. So we have placement and treatment available. Everyone that we're serving within our systems of care, everything is coordinated in a coordinated fashion.
And Gabby,
so once
let me
they're
let
out there,
Wes,
they're
let
not
me let
yours anymore.
Wes,
When they go out, do they
Wes,
get
let
tested?
me let Key respond to this, because I think Gabby was able to speak to it about the subset of service providers, but let me just let Key respond to the bigger question you're asking. Thanks, Gabby.
Thank you, President Chavez. So first, just a little background on the testing. The jail and Elmwood Jail are testing everyone at booking. They are quarantining individuals and then doing serious testing at 5 and 12 days before sort of putting people in the general population. At discharge, and of course, anyone who tests positive as part of the sort of surveillance testing that is going on in Elmwood or will be going on in Elmwood, or because of some contact case investigation, is isolated in sort of the medical ward. At discharge, people are not regularly tested. However, if there is suspicion that they may have been exposed or are going to a high-risk congregate setting, they are tested. People who are positive or potential exposures who are being released from the jail, they can isolate or quarantine in the hotels that the Office of Supportive Housing is managing for persons who are cases and contacts. When their quarantine or isolation period is over, then they are either transitioned to the service team under behavioral health or provided other temporary shelter options. People are not sort of followed out in the community and sort of tested. However, through Valley Homeless Healthcare Program, we are conducting regular surveillance testing at all of the congregate shelters, staff and residents. And Valley Homeless Healthcare Program is conducting surveillance testing at some of the larger encampments. And we have provided a report to the board monthly on the status of that. Fortunately, knock on wood, the sort of positivity rate among congregate shelters, unsheltered populations is under 2%. So we're not seeing a sort of a huge outbreak there. But to summarize, Wes, people who are positive or exposures coming out of the jails are assisted to isolate and quarantine. And we are conducting surveillance and testing at the congregate shelters, non-congregate shelters, and larger encampments.
One more follow-up question, Keith. What did you mean by suspect? Is there criteria that on which to make that judgment if they're suspected of having something? What is there criteria that go with it?
Yeah, just what we mean is, hey, maybe we find out that someone who works in the jail was COVID positive. We find out that this person was in close proximity to this inmate, for more than 15 minutes, and this person is going to be released tomorrow. So he might be positive, and so that's what we mean by a close contact.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We're going to go to Aaron, Pablo, and then to Cora.
Thank you. Wanted to say quickly in response to Judge Manley, want to point out that within the Santa Clara County Community Plan to End Homelessness, that ensuring that people involved in the criminal justice system do not become homeless is a named priority. So hopefully we'll get traction, additional traction on that as time comes. Have a question. I'm not sure if it's for Sherry or Gabby, but within the transmittal that you submitted, when it was looking at the gaps in services, it says that the pre-arrest diversion gap has been, the way to address it has been fully implemented. And I'm wondering what those programs are that we think are doing the pre-arrest diversion. I am aware in the write-up that the Sobering Center is now both diversion, and it sounds like people are being released from jail to go to the Sobering Center. So a couple questions within that. On the pre-arrest diversion, is there a law enforcement protocol so that law enforcement knows who do I take to jail, who do I take to the Sobering Center? Or do we have numbers on who's, which category the people there are falling into? And on the Sobering Center numbers, can we know how many are pre-arrest diversion and how many are the people that are being released after hours without a confirmed place to shelter who are going to the Sobering Center?
Javier, do you want to take that one?
Yes, I could take that one. So we did early on, to address your question about folks coming out of the jail and use the Sobering Center, we did have a working partnership with Office of Supportive Housing, Behavioral Health, and Custody Health. So those that were being released from jail, they needed a place to stay, and they were identified as part of critical individuals that supportive housing was going to house, but they needed a gap. So they were able to utilize the Sobering Center for that up to 23 hours. Some of them, they would come on a Saturday or a Friday evening, and then they would stay here for the following day. That was just a handful. That was just to triage those clients that were identified in custody due to COVID-19. We provided policies and procedures for all law enforcement agencies to use a Sobering Center / mental health drug triage. And in the next item under 4B, I know Sherry's going to talk a little bit more about the Mission Street, the Sobering Center data. But that identifies the usage of law enforcement agencies using it as a diversion process. So folks that are publicly intoxicated in the community or exhibiting some mental health issue or under the influence of some drugs, the officers can use a Sobering Center. And we've seen an increase over the last few months of utilization of the Sobering Center. So we believe that that is a pre-booking, but pre-jail diversion component as a tool for officers to use in the field.
So if we're considering that fully implemented, are we kind of figuring we're done with pre-arrest diversion?
So I think the category of pre-arrest, so it's basically the discretion of the law enforcement agencies. Do I arrest someone, take and book them in jail, or do I not arrest them and then take them to the Sobering Center and they're not booked into jail? There's no criminal justice record of that individual. So I think it's giving the officers the tools. Behavioral Health has also established other tools for officers to use. And so for us, the Sobering Center mental health drug triage is fully implemented. Now it's just making sure officers are aware of that, the usage of the Sobering Center.
I will say, I feel like in terms of if we're looking to do a no entry instead of re-entry, we need to have a more robust offering for law enforcement to have them not take people into jail.
The Sobering Center is, they do not get a criminal record. So they're entering the Sobering Center, which is administered by Horizon, so one of the substance use providers. And they link the clients to the behavioral health system of care. So they're being dropped off. Within 5 minutes, the officers leave and there's no record of that individual on their criminal record that they came to the Sobran Center.
I get that, but I'm just saying that what we're saying to law enforcement is you have one option other than taking people to jail. And
one of many options. They
Well,
could
I
take,
mean, I think
yeah.
that I think part of the point that Aaron's raising, and I'll just say this too, is without seeing numbers, it's hard to know what part of the system people are coming in, where are they going once they leave, and then does this option not work for the officers? If not, what are they requesting? You know, there's a lot more. There's just a lot more that we need to understand before we can say this part's finished or it's fully integrated. Because I don't. What's the waiting list? Are we having times that people aren't coming? Are we? In fact, I can tell you that being clear near the reentry center, that it's unclear to the officers that patrol this area who should be taken to that center and what kind of services, under what terms and conditions they go. And I know that because I'm here, like physically here, when we have people wandering around the parking lot who have needs. And the idea behind that, and we really need to, I think, have a deeper discussion about it, is what do we mean by a no entry center, and what are the full opportunities that provides, and what are we learning already from that experience? And like I said, officers, and I'm mostly dealing with San Jose PD, but some of our sheriffs don't. I mean, we operate it, and not everybody knows how to use it. So I think it's just where we are in the time. Aaron, were you done?
I would also love to know, on a separate topic, a lot of our focus in this committee goes into what's happening through behavioral health, which means up until they go into the jails and once they come out of the jails. Would really like to see some numbers in terms of what's happening under custody health in the jails. Because our experience is that folks decompensate quite a lot when they're in jail. So would love to kind of be able to wrap my head around a little bit what's going on within the jails, the amount of services, who's requesting it, what are they getting? And some of that is what's the link with current providers? Because our experience, as an example, is that unless the client is in a position to tell them what meds they're on when they go in, it's kind of an unknown. So it feels like there isn't necessarily integration with current providers where that exists, and just have a lot of questions about custody behavioral health.
Thank you.
If I can just add one thing, our diversion team and our behavioral health treatment team has a lot of ongoing communication with custody health to ensure that our people are properly medicated, that treatment interventions are put in place. We do case conferencing twice a week to ensure that our consumers, that their needs are being met in custody. So is it perfect? No, but we are doing a lot of work right now with custody and partnering, with motivational interviewing, all of our diversion efforts. So there is a lot of work underway, and our diversion team has a lot of communication with our treatment providers before release to ensure that the medications are in place, that the warm handoff is occurring. So I just want to add that as well.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Pablo, then to Cora, and then back to Christine.
Thank you, President Chavez. Really quick, I just wanted to follow up. As the hand raises were being addressed, some of the stuff that I wanted to talk about kind of came up. Just really, I wanted to just make a comment about how we are moving towards, this decarceration of folks, and there's less individuals in the county jail. I feel that it's really important to make sure that we're providing the full. I mean, we're seeing that reentry and the process that we're doing is working, right? We're seeing less individuals coming back to jail that are being connected to services. We're seeing people that are engaged in, going to the reentry center, connecting with housing, connecting with employment, doing all of that stuff. Because of the eligibility, they're being connected to those services. When we're looking at, and you brought up that no entry center, Cindy, that whole portion is being able to create more than just that sobering center. You know, like really taking a look at how much do we need a new jail? Maybe that space could be moved and used for a no entry center, so that officers in other places, instead of they're going to take them to the same place anyway. It's what we do with that place where they end up. You know, we could use that space or that building as, you know, our complete buy-in to this no entry. Being able to access services, being able to give them the full gamut of services that people get right now. If somebody comes home from jail or prison, or let's say pre-trial even, and they have a non-adjudicated case, I don't think they, Javier, are they eligible for services at the reentry center?
So it's anyone can access the reentry center. It's a matter, so some folks will receive a packet of information. Those that are under probation, parole, custody supervision, or have been released from custody within the last 12 months, they will receive the more of the services, screening, the assessment of behavioral health, the eligibility work staff. So we have to be very honest with ourselves in terms of how do we triage clients. With COVID-19, we had to limit the staff here at the reentry center. So we used to see about 100 people. We now see about 40 individuals a day. So with that, and keep in mind that now we only have limited staffing service providers here. I do want to mention that I wish Pastor Tony Williams was here, because I had a conversation with him, and faith-based centers can be considered as no entry centers. And it's the officers and the police chiefs and the captains working along with the faith base to utilize those faith-based centers. When we think about no entry, a lot of our clients have had criminal justice or have had a criminal justice record. It's just how long ago were they in custody, and are they currently under probation?
Got it. And just to follow up on that question is that when we're looking at creating a system that is gonna take individuals and as you were saying, Javier, the sobering center, it'll wipe off the fact that they won't have an arrest record. So being completely, you know, moving towards a way that we could connect those with the same type of services that are successful for the reentry clients, for those folks. It's just kind of just thinking it all the way through and everything that we're doing and considering my options. And I've always been kind of just looking at the building of the new jail and building of the new space. I've always wanted to just trying to throw it in there that there's other uses. I think there's better ideas that we could do than create more space to house more people on one hand, when on the other hand, we're looking at decarceration and pre-arrest diversion. And it's kind of like, if we're gonna go one way, let's go all the way and kind of buy into that, because we're sending mixed messages by the things that we're doing. That's just my opinion. So thank you.
Yeah, and Pablo, first of all, thank you for the comments and the feedback. And one other point I'll just make is that I do think that as our budget situation gets worse, and it will, that the point that Javier is raising about how we triage is going to be something that I'm hoping we all can discuss. And it's part of the reason that, from my perspective, being able to have dashboards that really look at where we're full, where we have waiting lines, where we're not serving people. We just have to, again, I think, be very intellectually honest. Otherwise, I don't think we're going to get where we need to go. And then the other thing I just want to point out is that, and Miguel, this is something I would just ask you to think about, is whether or not it makes sense to have, or Martha, to have a briefing for this group about an update on where we are with the jails. And let me just make one observation, and that is that the main jail that we have is in such poor shape that, as part of a consent decree with the prison law offices, we need to fix up the jails we do have, because they should be more appropriate, more humane, and more useful in terms of being part of addressing recidivism. So we should have a presentation come back about that. But I think the board is really struggling, Pablo, with that exact question right now. So thanks for raising it.
I just think that it's critical, you know, to this body is kind of around the reentry and the criminal justice involvement. I think there's a lot of folks that are on this that might have some really good ideas and really good input as to how we go about that. I understand the decrees. I understand that we have to raise the the level of the standard of the jail, but I don't think that building a new jail has to be the only way to do that.
Thanks, Pablo. I'm going to go to Cora and then back to Christine and Stephen. Manley. Judge Manley, you're going to have the last word here, I think. All right, Cora, go ahead. Cora, you're on mute. There you go. Actually, I can't hear you still.
Madam Chair, it appears she is unmuted, but we are not receiving any audio from our end. I believe she's toggling the mute button again.
Yeah, Cora, do you want to say a couple words real quick?
Yeah, I just.
Oh, there you go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, but you got to lean in there and be a little louder.
Okay, can you hear me now?
You're really hard to hear.
Okay, but see, this is my question. What I'm doing to make sure that our population.
Cora, we can't. Can you all hear Cora?
No.
No, we can't hear you, Cora.
Well, okay, well, I'll have to call in and
Cora, I'm sorry, we can't hear you. Yeah, maybe if you push your volume up a little bit.
Push your volume up.
Thanks, Wes.
Okay.
There you go.
Go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
Okay, now I'll be quick. I missed a few meetings because I had an old computer that will not take the Zoom app. Number one. Number two, it's because I didn't know how to use the computer. So then my question is, what are we doing to make sure that our population is a priority in the program that you have now about bridging the gap? How are we bridging them? Or even making sure that they're a priority to be bridged, if that's a word.
And do you mean as it relates to digital and computers and the like?
Electronic access to the services that we offer.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So did you all hear that? What she's asking is, what are we doing to make sure that we're able to provide services to high need populations that don't have computers, and how are we bridging that gap? So Javier, could I start with you?
Absolutely. So individuals that need connection to behavioral health screening assessments, and they can't do it over the phone or don't have capability on the computer, they come to the center and there's an in-person assessment done. Individuals that are in treatment, behavioral health does connect with them over the phone, and I think they're working on doing more of a telecommuting or through Zoom. And then for clients that are accessing any of our programs, just most recently, we have a new partnership with the County Office of Ed to help our clients gain a high school diploma. And so if clients don't have access to a computer, we do have a computer lab here, so we'll make it available for them to use it to do that educational services. A lot of our CBOs, like I was just talking to Pastor Tony Williams, his faith-based center has a computer lab that individuals can use. And there's also staff that are helping them to get acquainted on using the computer systems.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Christine and then Judge Manley.
Thank you. I just wanted to piggyback a little bit on some of the things that Aaron had to say. We get a lot of reports, I know, at DBUG from families and detainees about custody behavioral health services. Families especially have a really hard time if their loved one is taken into custody and they are mentally ill, and that mentally ill person does not know, will not sign a release of information, cannot advocate for themselves. It's very difficult for the families to coordinate care for them from the outside without jumping through a multiplicity of hoops. So if that could somehow be streamlined, that the information coming from families to help their loved ones could be more quickly addressed, that would be helpful. Sometimes it takes, it's not easy to find the phone number of who to call once your loved one is in there. It's not easy to get hold of people in charge of the custody mental health portion, and it's not easy to get all the forms filled out to be able to have your loved one's health needs and medication needs met. So if that could be looked at, that would be very good. The input we get from a lot of the detainees is when someone from custody mental health or behavioral health, comes to talk to them, it's sort of, are you suicidal or homicidal? It's not, they haven't reported that it's much more in depth than that. And that they can't get sort of in between services. And there's a lot of hesitancy to point yourself out as someone with mental health needs. And as far as what Pablo was talking about, I don't know that with our declining population in the jails that we need more cells. So when we're talking about this new space, although we do need all these things that have been indicated in the consent decree, we need medical services, we need a lot more mental health services, we need substance abuse treatment. Can we please look at that without the addition of more cells as a more community spot, or a spot where people leaving custody can go in and get the services they need without remaining incarcerated. And in addition, I just want to put out to the Office of Supportive Housing, a lot of connection with being able to get services and housing assumes that you have a phone. So if there's some way that we can make sure that people, when they're exiting, have a telephone, that would be helpful too. Thanks.
Thank you, Christine. Judge Manley, you have the last word.
All right, just briefly, looking at the other information provided and data that Matt Fisk has shown me, if I'm understanding the data, approximately over 50% of the individuals booked into our jail spend 3 days or less, and perhaps 42% spend only 1 day. That is thousands of individuals over a year. And I just two comments. One, if that is the longest period of time they're going to be held in jail, why are we putting them in jail? And number two, if we're going to be triaging, what efforts are we making to triage people that are there so short a time, and how many of them are mentally ill or substance abusers who really need treatment and services out in the community? Because I think to me, that is a major gap in our efforts to try and lower the population in the jail and keep people healthy and in the community and moving forward. And if we don't address that issue, it seems to me we're missing a big part of the picture. And so much of our discussion is about those people that spend more time in jail, and where there's more time to plan, more time to triage. It just seems to me we ought to at least highlight this as an issue that we should address. Thank you.
Why don't we'll agendize a discussion. I'll shape something up with the staff to think about how to do that. That's good feedback. All right, I want to thank everybody. This was a really very fulsome presentation. The one request that I have, and it's one that I've made a few times, and I'm going to say to Miguel that I don't know if this is something maybe that would make sense to formally bring to the board in the form of a referral, although I feel like I've done that already as well. But that I want to make sure that we are putting together a dashboard so we can look at services utilized, how many people we're putting out on the street, where are people coming in or out. And I think the point that Judge Manley raised is really a good one, which is we have a target population we're focused on. How are we managing that target population? I have to say that I was not as enthusiastic about the RDA report because it wasn't based on numbers. It was based on interviews and anecdotal interviews, and not numbers. So their list of recommendations, while good, because I think they were like, let's do more and let's do it better, was great. But given that we're going to be going through budget cuts, I won't know how to prioritize what we're working on. And I would really, really like to see a dashboard of this data. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Maya on my staff to work with Miguel and Sherry to shape up a referral to the board that will allow us to have a better handle on utilization of services. And therefore, as the contracts, which I hope we're going to be doing, are more flexible, we're going to better understand who can be handled within the resources we have today and the types of services we have today. What's the population that's just not going to assist, and how do we have a more honest conversation about that? And by the way, in my mind, that includes people who are seriously mentally ill that should not be in custody, but they do need to be in a locked facility for their own protection. And you know, we've got to just be able to have that conversation more fulsomely, more honestly, and I think it will help us do better long-term planning. And then the other thing I did hear folks talk about, we will have a report back on where we are with the jail as well, and the reconstruction of that. So again, thanks to the staff. And let me just say, I'm always asking for more, but I want to say from where we were 3 years ago, incredible body of work, especially to the behavioral health team, like amazing, amazing, amazing amount of services that you've stood up. So thank you for your incredible leadership. And the fact that we can have this conversation is really reflective of the professional approach you've already had in partnership with Reentry and Javier and his team. So thank you for that. All right. There's no action on this. So Miguel, now we really are turning it over to you.
Great.
Take two.
Thank you so much, Supervisor. So as I noted, or as you noted, there's a very comprehensive presentation today with multiple presenters. So I will quickly go through the first 10 slides, and I'll ask Melanie to start the PowerPoint. Great, thank you, Melanie. So to prepare for this meeting, the county's public safety and justice partners met with the court to discuss the court's extension of its emergency zero bail bail schedule that was extended until January 31st of 2021. What's important about that is that unless the order is rescinded sooner, that order could be in place for 9.5 months, significant period of time. And since our current process generally begins services after sentencing, and after time in custody is served, this could increase the length of time before individuals have access to county support services as they are awaiting their court proceedings. Also, it's worthy to note that within the current process, arrestees are not generally linked to legal representation until they appear in court for arraignment. And also during the booking process, the Office of Pretrial Services is working quickly to complete the pretrial assessment and provide a recommendation to the court relating to possible release, but it's difficult for pretrial services to gather and verify complete information at that early stage of the process. So these are some of the systemic challenges that we are focusing on for today's presentation and that we will review over the next few months. So moving on to slide 2. This slide has an outline of the presentation for today. At the conclusion of the slides, we will provide an opportunity for any partners who participated in our discussions to add comments. We want to begin with the Superior Court, with the Office of the Sheriff, and the Office of Reentry Services. Next slide. So we wanted to start this presentation at a very, very high level to provide context on where key decisions points occur and to visually represent how the current process flows. We know there are many variables and exceptions to consider, and this process involved numerous partners. So this is sort of a work in progress and one that will evolve over time, but we think this should be a helpful depiction of the current process to facilitate the discussion here and the discussion going forward as it evolves. In essence, at a very, very high level, this process can be subdivided into 3 phases. Stage 1, pre-arrest. This is when law enforcement interaction begins and law enforcement determines the outcome of the interaction based on their expertise, and also a bail schedule comes into account as well. This is of course very complicated because of the number of law enforcement agencies involved, but it's also noteworthy that there is lots of discretion in how to handle matters at the pre-arrest stage. Stage 2 is post-arrest and booking. This is the phase that occurs when an individual may receive may receive a citation that orders them to appear in court, or they are actually transported to main jail to be booked. It's during this stage of the process where the Office of Pretrial Services gathers information with assistance from admin booking that will be presented to the bench for judicial review. Stage 3, pretrial supervision, detention, or release. After judicial review, there will be a determination if and at what level supervision should occur until court proceedings commence. And of course, court proceedings themselves are the fourth phase, but for clarity on today's discussion, we will only focus on these first 3 phases. Next slide. I know this at first glance looks awfully complicated, but that's because the process is complicated. We did our best to try to pull back and show it. It's not a step-by-step process flow, but identifies key steps in the current system that determine if an individual will proceed to the next phase. We intend to use this high-level process flow to help frame discussions to identify where we can gain efficiencies on the county side by increasing data sharing, by leveraging technology, and by redeploying staff to expedite the release of those who will not remain in detention. This work is important during the current pandemic as we work collaboratively to minimize the spread of COVID-19 and in the jails, or the spread of COVID-19 in the jail by identifying safe releases. When and if SB 10 goes into effect, SB 10 being the legislation that provides for no cash bail, there will be, we believe, a mindset shift to one that is much more one of a presumption of release. So the county can have the greatest impact during stage 2 of this process. Though reliance on the cash bail system has decreased, there are still individuals who will post bail in accordance with the bail schedule so they can be released from custody or who would have qualified for release on their own recognizance. During our data analysis, as was noted earlier by Judge Manley, we identified that approximately 53% of inmates are released within 3 days. To minimize the impact to arrestees and best utilize staffing resources, this will be the priority population that we look to serve over the next few months. Next slide. The next few slides contain information from a new dashboard piloted just yesterday with the county's public safety and justice partners. The dashboard is a pilot and it utilizes criminal justice information, so we are taking precautions to ensure that the data is anonymized so that it can be presented to the community as static data. I will go through these quickly as they are also attached to the agenda. Next slide. This first slide demonstrates that even prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, jail bookings were declining significantly for felons. With the district attorney's recent announcement regarding Bend the Arc reforms, we are also hopeful to continue to see a significant downward trend for misdemeanor bookings. Next slide. As a result of the jail reform efforts and statewide criminal justice reform efforts, we have seen the average jail population steadily declining. At the same time, pretrial services has steadily climbed, with the COVID-19 pandemic representing a steep increase for pretrial services. It's noteworthy that we now have more people receiving pretrial services than the number being incarcerated. Next slide. This next slide, or next few slides, cover the period of January 2019 through August of 2020. The county's public safety and justice partners will analyze this data using the groupings around the edge of the slide to determine focus areas. So why don't we just leave that up for a good 20 seconds or so people can scan that slide and pull the information they need from it. All right, next slide. As I stated earlier, the days in custody data will be an area of focus. The goal is to focus on the pre-sentence population and work collaboratively to gather information to assist the court in determining the next steps for an individual. The data here is complicated. It's in your packet. But, we can always go back as we discuss it to have these dashboards in front of you as information resources. Next slide. So we will continue to monitor new offenses to prioritize the safety of our community. Please note that these are booking numbers and not sentencing numbers. The PAR team is a group of attorneys, district attorney, public defenders, who are getting together and helping clients pre-arraignment. They have served as an invaluable resource to support the pre-sentence population to safely complete supervision. And you'll actually hear more later about how we intend to redeploy resources so we can expand on that model. So I know that's a lot of data. It's in your packet and we can go back and re-refer to it as we discussed. But next, I'd like to ask Sherry Terrell, the Interim Director for the Behavioral Health Services Department, to give an update on the Mission Street Sobering Center.
Great, thank you, Miguel. So the Mission Street Sobering Center offers both a sobering center and mental health triage component. During fiscal year 2020, the Mission Street Sobering Center provided services for a total of 798 unique clients. You'll note that between the months of March 2020 through June of 2020, we've seen a pretty significant increase in utilization, with the Sobering Center serving over 100 clients during the months of May and June. In the second table, you'll see that we have broken out the admissions per program. So you can see the number of individuals served in the sobering, mental health triage, and mental health drug triage components. And you'll notice that it's somewhat mixed. However, there is greater utilization of both the mental health and mental health drug triage components, more so than the sobering center. Thank you. Move on to the next slide.
Hi, this is David Angel. So let's see. What I want to take a few minutes to talk about was the discussion that we all had earlier in the week, and found there's a lot of areas of agreement, which I think will allow us to move forward. So I wanted to just highlight those. Next slide, please. So the first area of agreement, but I think it's worth stating because it will mean a pretty significant change, is.
Oh. Yeah, where you been?
Oh, am I on or?
You are, I'm sorry, someone else is talking. Frank, could you mute them?
Okay, good. It's so unnerving, Supervisor. You never know if you're just talking to yourself in your room, wearing your suit, like if my life has become completely Kafka-esque. So anyway, thank you. Okay, so that's actually a shot, so good. But what we all agreed upon, all the county actors that were discussing this, is that we want to shift to risk assessment and not cash when it comes to detention decisions. And I know there can be a lot of concern about this, but I really think perhaps the most important, well, there's a number of very important things to remember. Of course, there's the issue of justice and equity. So that's of course the most important thing. But I think what's often forgotten is that our current system really does not make us safer, because it's basically over and under inclusive, because it depends entirely on your ability to pay the bail. So if you can readily come up with the bail, no matter how dangerous you are, you will be released. And if you can't, no matter how little of a risk you present, you will be held. Now that's an oversimplification, but it's close enough to the truth. So what we're proposing is really, as much as possible, that we can shift away from cash bail altogether and using risk assessment instead. Next slide, please. The other area that we all had agreement on, and I think this is going to be a fairly simple change to make, is that the traditional practice was for the Department of Pretrial Services to give a recommendation to the judge and say, we recommend releasing this person or not. And I think all of us agreed that that's problematic. And what's a lot better to do is to give options to the judge, to give evidence to the judge, partly just for the integrity of the system. I mean, the district attorney, we never present to the judge, we advocate based on what we think the facts are, but we never tell the judge, and this is what, this is the conclusion you should do. That's for the judge to decide. But we also think that it kind of ties everyone's hands in a way that isn't good, because it frequently will lead to over incarceration because there might be a recommendation to hold someone when the judge might decide differently. It just kind of sets a certain process in motion, and of course the other way around. But fortunately, again, that looked like an area where all of us, meaning the defense bar, public defender, pretrial services, the court, county council, and others were all in agreement. Next slide, please. One thing I think we can explore that should not really have an adverse budget impact is some tech solutions to our current bottlenecks. A lot of our bottlenecks seem to come because information is not shared quickly enough. And this hits us everywhere from the DA has decided not to file charges, but somebody's held in custody past the point that decision has been made, to our PAR team can't get the information that they need because of, it's held in one location, not another. I'll note that I'm really encouraged by earlier in the year where we did our cannabis record clearances. And that was a legal problem, but at the heart of it, it was also a tech problem, and that we needed to be able to get the information to communicate with one another. So I think that that is an area where it's ripe, that we have the staff, we just need to dedicate a way to find those bottlenecks and share the information. So I think we were all encouraged by that. Next slide, please. Of course, we were all supportive of zero bail. The court, we were pleased to see, extended that. The DA joined in the request on that, because of course we don't think cash bail is useful. We don't really want something different from, there's no need to have a bail schedule for certain sorts of crimes. All that having been said, I don't think in the larger picture that we're going to succeed if we fail to put appropriate conditions on people to prevent whatever problem brought them to this juncture from reoccurring. So in other words, we don't want zero bail to actually make our situation worse unintentionally because we're failing to intervene in the lives of people whose lives are both in crisis and often a danger to others. Next slide, please. And this brings us to, I think, the main idea that we really want to push forward is front-loading the sort of restoration process. In other words, we don't necessarily need more, we do need more services, but we're not necessarily just saying we need more services to adopt all these problems. What we need to do is shift from providing the needed services 18 months, 2 years later, after the criminal justice process has worked its way out, and instead front load it so that we are providing these services at the front end. That was, we've already done that. For our, as many of you know, our narcotics policy, where we stopped charging recreational drug users in the county. Many people were concerned that this meant there would be a huge increase in the amount of services that alcohol and drug services and behavioral mental health had to provide in the reentry center. What we pointed out is they're providing the same services. It's just now they get to provide them to the person at the front end instead of waiting until after the question of guilt or innocence has been resolved. Next slide, please. One example of that, which is already, it's been in effect for a year or so, it's had hundreds of people participate, but we'd like to see it really increased, is the Home Detention Project. And what this involves is, instead of using jail as a form of punishment and accountability and change, we allow people to serve their sentence while remaining in their home. They're given, they don't have to stay in their home 24/7. For example, they're allowed to go out for school, work, training, rehabilitation, childcare. In other words, all the behaviors we want to model and increase for people. Now, obviously, that's not going to be the right program for every single person, but it's probably going to be the right program for the vast majority of people. And this way we can really keep people from entering into our system in the first place. Next slide. And this finally brings us to the vision that Supervisor Chavez has often challenged us with, or mentioned, I think, from the beginning, which is, can we shift to a no entry system? And I do think we can. And we obviously have made strides there, but I think we can really push that forward. What this involves, though, is a really it's very achievable, but I think it's a fairly radical shift in perspective. My colleagues and I at the Public Defender's Office, we've been talking about this a lot lately, that our criminal justice system is really traditionally focused on the narrow question of, is the person guilty of this crime or not guilty of this crime? And that is, to be sure, a really important question. The problem with just focusing on that before you focus on anything else is the overwhelming majority of cases, the actual guilt of the person is not really at question. Most people end up pleading guilty, and honestly, and I think the public defender, I mean, they will affirm this to some degree, you know, often really the actual guilt is not the question. But we spend months and months and months focused on that, often while a person remains in custody. Instead, what we're hoping to do is when a person enters the criminal justice system, begin to focus at the beginning, how can we restore them? How can we restore the community? How can we make them whole? How can we divert them from the criminal justice system? That doesn't mean we have to never answer the question of whether they're guilty or not. We still will have trials. That's fine. That's not just fine, that's necessary. But if we can front load the rehabilitation and the restoration process at the beginning, we think we're going to resolve a lot more questions, because of course, by solving that, you've probably solved the real problem. And it also, if you combine this with zero bail, pretrial services, reentry, and programs like home detention, we might be able to recognize that most people do not need to be incarcerated at all, even if they have committed a criminal law violation. And so I think that's, you can flip to next slide, but I think that's my last slide. There we go. All right, thank you. And of course, I'll be available for questions afterwards.
Thank you. Matt, I think this is you.
Okay, good morning, everybody. Thank you for giving me some time. You'll all be grateful that I have only one slide. I'd just like to share that based on personal experience and professional experience, I've always seen our system as more of a continuum, a health, safety, and justice continuum. I really, truly believe that health leads to safety, mental health, of course, physical health. And as David said very well, crime does stem from and is contributed to by addiction and by mental illness. There's definitely a correlation, and we can definitely make improvements there. I'd like to skip down to the very bottom of my slide and talk about what I feel is our overarching and shared goal for success, and that is to fulfill our health, safety, and justice mission by averting the collaterally criminogenic criminal justice system entanglement. It hurts when I hear people refer to it as the criminal punishment system, because I don't think any of us have that intention. But we can truly avert, it's a powerful crime fighting tool to provide people with support systems to succeed in life in general. That's how we can truly prevent this dangerous crime. And as David said, there will be a small proportion of society that needs to be processed through the entire system. And we need to respect that fact, but assess it up front and get people to the experts. Respect is actually, I'll share this with you. Evelyn Garcia pointed out that our key term in the Office of Pretrial Services is respect, and I misspelled it on the slide. And then I saw that I think Melanie corrected it for me. And of course, my staff member said, and Matt, there's a song about that. They even spell it out, R-E-S-P-E-C-T. But I was relieved to see that it's here. And the reason why I focus on that term is because I think we have the tools that we need. I don't think we need to add a lot of additional resources. I think it's more about how we utilize the resources that we have and reinvest them. I respect that the jail has a purpose. And law enforcement has an extremely important purpose, and we need to honor and respect and use them for the purpose that they are best at serving. So my 3 points are simple. ABC 1, 2, 3. 1, educate through data. Miguel shared some data that we just got. Supervisor Chavez, I know what you're asking for are tangible results. So I'm going to give you 3 suggestions that I've been thinking about along with others. I believe this is a consensus. I believe that we have a rare instance in Santa Clara County of consensus on most of the things that we're talking about today. So we have a dashboard. We know what works and we know what's not working. We should rely on data and science. We can take this dashboard and we can add to it, and we can actually map. This is letter B. We can map processes. TSS has been wonderful with pretrial. I hope this will show up on my screen. What Miguel shared, I can actually take down to my phone level. This shows one of our officers, Officer Romano. He's obviously very devoted because he worked 8 to 5 and he worked through his lunch hour. His supervisor could actually look at, and I won't show it because it's confidential, look at all the data entry and look at the quality, the quantity, the promptness, and the lag time of that officer's steps. And I'll tell you, he's an excellent officer. We didn't have that level of accountability before COVID. TSS, I wish we could just, forgive the pun, copy and paste them everywhere because they're looking at our process and they are helping us to see what we need to do and what we don't need to do because it simply doesn't add value. So I'm suggesting that we take that map, that's just a sketch, what Miguel shared, but we map each step. And basically, we actually have staff. We also have volunteers that have come from Stanford. There's a whole program called Business Process Reengineering, Sigma 6 Sigma, and Lean Business Processing certifications. They basically ask the 5 W's, who, what, when, where, how, and why of each step. And the question is, does this add value? And then they measure it. There's a timeline above and a timeline below. And it's amazing how you can save resources, reinvest them. And let's be honest, in saving resources, you end up saving jobs, spend less time on paper and more time on people. So I really suggest that we leverage the data that we have, that we agree on this data set. Even if it's off, at least it's a baseline we can agree upon. And you'll like it, Supervisor Chavez, because you can click on it and you can literally turn the dial and you can see what it looks like in 30 days or 60 days and what it looks like in this population and what it looks like at this age range, instead of having to wait for months in between meetings. We don't have time for that now. So my third suggestion is that we take our expertise collectively and do what the tech firms that surround us do. They call it a sprint, basically a well-facilitated pilot. I would say 1 month. Somebody has expertise or talent from the EOC or somebody who can coordinate us might help us to take the steps that we agree upon in this business map and just try it for 1 month. I think the most we'd have to invest is maybe a little bit of overtime, but I think it would be well worth it. I would like to just share, I told you I would give you tangible. So the other two are, over the last couple of weekends, we've had volunteer staff. They've come in and they re-reviewed the full jail population, which sits at 2013 today. I don't think I've seen it lower. I asked the staff to go through and look at anybody that's re-reviewable because years back, the bail release work group, the board directed us to do re-reviews, which the PAR team has been doing with the resources that they have. And we'd like to extend and expand that. So of the 2,000 or so folks in jail, we looked at about 300 possibly re-reviewables, then we prioritized them. There's about 85 cases that we're going to ask the PAR team to take a look at because their circumstances may have changed. They may be safely released into the community. But I'd really like to take the opportunity to look at this group, and what this means is me staffing the jail. It means pretrial sharing a report with the partners that probably doesn't share much more than a name and maybe a color code. But at least it keeps us on the same page as far as the group that we're helping. And that would mean that we would need to have staff, the sheriff, who I was really impressed. She called me this morning. She knows all the steps of the booking process. She knows the ins and outs of these business processes. And she's willing to allow us to utilize space in the lobbies at both jails. We're probably going to need to staff those lobbies 24/7 and co-locate with other partners to facilitate better releases. This is what I'm hearing about. This is what I'd like to do. So that's the end of my presentation. I'd love to hear any questions or concerns.
Thank you. I'm going to ask, who's presenting this last section?
It'll be presented by Charles Hendrickson from the.
Oh, great. Thanks, Charles. I apologize. I'm going to ask that you be as crisp as you can on these next steps. And mostly because we have about 30 or I'm sorry, till 11:45, and then we have a hard stop. And I want to make sure people have a chance to ask questions. So thank you. Charlie, we are having a very difficult time hearing you. We can't hear you still.
Sound check earlier.
Oh, perfect. There you go.
Okay. So I think I can be Chris. Thank you very much, Supervisor Chavez and Miguel, for the opportunity to present. And thank you very much, David and Matt, for your presentations as well. This is essentially two very simple proposals that are going to help us better address the issue practically of decarceration, which I think we all agree and have for many years now is something that's a really admirable and essential goal for us to reinvest in our community. And from the public defender's perspective, what we're really focusing on, if we can go to the next slide, is this idea that what happens between the point of arrest and the point of arraignment. Historically, and I've been a public defender since 1990, the public defender has never represented people in that time frame. Public defenders first meeting with their clients and the first appointment is at the arraignment. And yet what we know is the people are booked into custody and they're sitting for 3 to 6 days without any meaningful representation. What does that mean for the issue of decarceration? Judges who make decisions either as night judges or duty judges pre-arraignment, they trade on information which is provided to them about the individual who's been arrested. That information may be very, very limited, and because they don't have sufficient information, they can't make really a meaningful decision about the decision to release or not. The same thing is true at arraignment, because if the public defender isn't there prior to arraignment, we really have nothing meaningful to add at the arraignment about that individual or how to successfully release them back into the community with minimal services to support them, and the individual ends up being detained. So with the advent of the PAR program, the pre-arraignment program, which I really want to commend Supervisor Chavez for bringing up as a recommendation in 2018 that we took full advantage of. We created this team. We are for the first time now representing people pre-arraignment and recognizing that it provides great dividends because it provides meaningful information to the court about the information about the individual. And it also allows us just to begin to think about ways to successfully release people, whether they need support through mental health, substance abuse, housing, other types of things. We can go to the next slide. So again, it gets back to that point of that there's better decisions made regarding pretrial release and charging decisions, and we can tailor plans to connect the persons arrested with services. Next slide. I just wanted to show that this is something that is really a convergence of ideas, that because the district attorney in his recent presentation on Bend the Arc was asking us, if you look at that middle part, asking defense attorneys to bring to him social history information about the defendant in any mitigation when making charging decisions. When they make charging decisions, the way to do that is to get the information earlier. Next slide. So our proposals are two. The first proposal is for the public defender for the first time to be present shortly after the booking process and provide legal counsel to our clients. And we can do that simply through having tablets at the jail. And on the other end of that tablet would be an attorney who could have a 20-minute conversation with that individual. Next slide. We estimate we need about 3 tablets in order to do that. To provide attorney interviews will be roughly 20 minutes in length. Next slide. Does that, I don't think, you can go to the next slide. I don't think that's a video that's not going to play. Thank you. Oh, there you go. This is just a representation of what it would look like for a sheriff to lead one of our clients into a private meeting space so that he could have a 20-minute conversation with an attorney. Next slide. Obviously, I think this goes without saying, but a confidential meeting is essential because we're asking the individual to share personal information about themselves and have a attorney-client privilege relationship. Next slide, thank you. The next 3 slides simply focus on the fact that, you can go to the slide after this. We understand that the sheriff has primary duties of public safety, and we'd like to do this in a way that we think is minimally intrusive to that, and the things that would be required of the sheriff would simply be to connect the tablet for the PDO and the client, and to instruct the arrestee on the successful use of the tablet. Next slide. Our understanding is that after booking and before the person is actually transported for housing, there is some gap time, so that we're hoping that this should not slow down the booking process for that individual. Next slide. So our next proposal is that for a magistrate to make a meaningful release decision for an individual, again, the magistrate has to have good information, one, about that information, about the individual. So that's, where do they live? What's their work situation? Are there family members who are dependent upon them? How long have they been in the community? And also, what services do they need to successfully reintegrate with society such that they probably don't need to be in jail? And currently, next slide. Currently, there is no mechanism in place for us to communicate that information to a judge prior to arraignment. There are duty judges and night judges who make release decisions in between the time of arrest and arraignment. But because the public defender has previously not been involved in that process, we haven't taken advantage of this statute, which has been on the books for years, 1269C, which essentially says that people who are arrested and booked in a charge, that those individuals either themselves personally or through attorney, family member, or friend may make an application to the magistrate for release on bail that's lower than is provided in schedule or on their own recognizance. Currently, there's no mechanism for the public defender to take this information and provide that to a magistrate or duty judge so they can consider that when making release decisions. Next slide. And one of the proposals is that we also include DBUG or other organizations to essentially be able to access information from family members to provide the same information. Currently, I believe the way in which duty judges and night judges access information is through a POPS management database. And what we would be looking for is some way for us to include the information which we gather from our client, join that or supplement that information with pretrial services information so that the duty judge has that more expanded information when he or she makes that release decision. Next slide. And this was a slide that addresses the issue of creating potentially a pretrial services website or partnering with Silicon Valley DBUG to also gather that information, not just from the individual, but from clients. Thank you.
Thank you for that presentation. I'm going to go to the public for a public comment, and then I'll come back to the panel for discussion.
The next speaker is Scott Largent. I am unmuting you. Please accept the unmute and you'll have 2 minutes to speak. The timer will start when you begin speaking.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Scott Largent. These are great ideas to hear right now. And Matt, again, you're knocking it out of the park. You're bringing things to the table that that people need to hear. I really enjoyed hearing about the not the reentry, but the non-entry. I mean, I think that's an important part about this. Better get back to work right now. I'm just, didn't want to crash your party too hard here today. Yeah, this is good stuff. Why can't the public defender start chiming in a lot more about this? You guys, it seems like everybody here is doing their job. So Damon, let's get that hand up. Let's start chiming in, and let's start solving some problems before people get into the system. Thank you.
So I'm going to go to the panel and see if there are thoughts, comments, or questions. And I'm going to start with Pablo Gaxiola, and then I'll go to you, Cora.
Thank you, President. Really quickly, I just wanted to add something to that. Is maybe all of that stuff is great. Great work, Matthew. Adding a component where there's a connection between service providers that they've already completed. Oftentimes, a person will be on track, and even part of the recovery process is relapse. That's part of the cycle of recovery as well. It's just making sure to include the key factors that you reach out to service providers and say they're connected with employment at Goodwill and they've got moral recognition therapy going on and they're being successful there, and they had a slip up, that might also be a mitigating factor, and and there's an opportunity for them to reconnect to that, either employment or community service. That's probably critical as well.
Thank you. Cora? Cora, you're on mute. Go ahead, Cora.
Thank you for this presentation. It's really very helpful. I will ask.
Cora, I'm having a really hard time hearing you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, better.
All right. I really would like to ask everybody the continuous evaluation.
Oh, Cora, I'm sorry. We really can't hear you very well.
Okay.
Turn up your volume.
It's 100.
Okay, Cora, now we can hear you. I think you just need to speak very loudly.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, please.
Yeah. All right. I would like to ask everybody to invest in
Louder.
a continuous evaluation using both data and data.
Cora, I'm sorry. We can't hear you.
Oh, I don't know what's going on. Okay, can you hear
Cora,
me now?
Yes.
All right.
Stay there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Stay close to the machine.
All right. So, I would like to ask everyone to invest evaluation.
Louder.
Yeah. Using both data and narrative for a quick change if necessary to involve,
Louder.
to align both personal and cultural specific changes if necessary. Is that okay?
Heard that correct. Good. That's good. That's a
Yeah.
good one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judge Manley?
I hit one.
Yeah, just a brief comment. And I of course defer to Judge Ryan, but I have over many years reviewed recommendations, which is what they would call from pretrial services. And I just want to raise one issue and this goes back to the discussion of options, giving options to judges. for release. It's really important that those options be real, because the judge relies on that. And if the options are not really available, and I raise this, Supervisor, because these are difficult times. I know for the budget, you have to make hard decisions. But if we do not have the options, you place the judge in a very difficult position, in my view, particularly when we're dealing with mentally ill offenders who really do need all the services that have been discussed earlier in this presentation. So I just raise this as an issue that we really need to address. And I know that you are very interested in doing that. I just think we have to keep it in the forefront of our discussions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, that's helpful. I'm going to go to Wes, and then I'm going to go to Aaron O'Brien.
I missed most of it, but in the beginning, Miguel talked about pretrial protections or whatever in the system to protect us from the coronavirus. He did it so fast, I couldn't figure out where that was, and I was wondering if he could walk me through that, if he's still there, about protecting people from the virus. Remember, you showed that in the beginning with that graph that you had, walking through the system and how you were ensuring safety from spreading the virus. Can you go through that again for just a little bit?
Well, you know, that high level flow chart did not, it's the whole system. So it didn't focus on COVID-19. There are a lot of things being done. I should highlight the sheriff's incredible work. As we all know, there was a little bit of an outbreak, but I heard in the last board meeting that number is now in the single digits. So they're taking lots and lots of precautions, as Key Lee described, but it's not, the COVID efforts are not embedded in that flow chart, unfortunately.
But it was in the beginning on the entry part, not the release part.
And Wes, what I might recommend is that we do have a presentation that's already been prepared that wasn't presented as part of this meeting.
Okay.
That I'll ask my staff to get you a copy of and walk through with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks. Maya or Paul, whichever of you can access that would be great, because it is a really important body of work. Aaron?
So first I want to say I am so encouraged by this and really appreciate all the work that everybody's put into it and their thoughts, and it really does make me hopeful. I want to piggyback a little bit on what Judge Manley said in terms of bringing recommendations to him that are real, which means that we have the capacity. And so my guess is that Matt is a data-driven enough guy that he would do this already, but I think it's important that he tracks and we track as a system what are the desired recommendations, and then what do we actually have capacity for, because that'll tell us what we need more and less of.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Matt?
Very, very briefly. Aaron, it seems like I always agree with everything you say. Maybe the day will come when that doesn't happen, but what we're moving toward, hopefully, is presenting to the court factors for their consideration. We want to look at risks and potential real impacts, but also needs, and do we have the resources to actually facilitate a safe release? If we don't, we're going to be honest with the court and say we don't have those resources. That's the frame.
And Damon?
Supervisor, I just wanted to kind of add, and I think it was implied by all the presentations today, and was also kind of raised in the discussion about these early days of detention, but really trying to focus our efforts on those first 48, 36 hours. I think the statistics really bear out how destabilizing that is for the average individual, and how it feeds kind of the criminogenic reasons and cycles of why people are in custody or return to custody, in terms of losing jobs, losing housing, and not just the impact on them, but the destabilizing impact that kind of reverberates into the community, because it impacts their families as well. And so one, I look forward to us having that conversation, in particular, as you mentioned earlier, as kind of a second area of focus. But I wanted to kind of emphasize that because I think it's woven through both what David Angel talked about, obviously Matt's presentation, and what Charlie was talking about. I think it's a particular area that we really want to focus on in terms of improving our services and then improving the ultimate outcome. Thank you.
Thanks, Damon. Molly?
Thank you, Supervisor Chavez. I just want to call out and repeat what Assistant District Attorney David Angel said today, which was, and I quote, "Most people don't need to be incarcerated at all." The fact that we have a high-level DA saying that out loud at this group is really extraordinary, and I just wanted to repeat it so that we all remember that's the direction we're moving in. Thank you.
Thanks. I just want to make a couple of recommendations, and also let me just ask Judge Ryan, did you want to add anything? You're on mute, Judge Ryan.
I do appreciate the discussion today. I'm glad that we can be partners with everyone here. It's a great group of people to work with, and I think that as a county, we stand above a lot of other counties in our ability to work together to try to find appropriate solutions. And I want to emphasize how important it is for judges to have the very kind of information that is being talked about here and having it at a very early stage. And I'm going to use just a very quick example to explain how that would be helpful. So this is a hypothetical. I'm not talking about any specific case, which I cannot do, but if you're presented as a night judge or a duty judge with a kind of a police report or a summary of a police report that says, you know, a couple standing on a corner, the next thing they know, they're waiting for a traffic light. The next thing they know, someone comes up to them and starts to attempt to stab them with a knife. They don't know the person doesn't know them, they don't understand what's going on. Police called, they arrest the person, they want to charge them, for instance, with maybe assault with a deadly weapon. That's the information that we have a lot of times. And from pretrial services, they'll try to talk to the person. From a quick look at it, you might surmise that there might be some mental health issues involved there that needed to be addressed, but you don't have any other information. You don't have any information about, do they have a home? Do they have anybody that could take care of them? Are they taking medication? Do they have a doctor? That's where this kind of information that we're talking about from the attorneys and pretrial services, I can't say enough about them. We are all very lucky to have Matt and a wonderful pretrial service agency. But that's the kind of information that we need. So someone like me looking at that going, I can see that person needs some help and they may not need to be in jail. I might want to release them, but I can't do that and be assured of public safety unless I have some more information. So the earlier we get that information, the earlier we can consider it.
Thank you. I think I just want to make a couple recommendations. Really, Miguel, I'm going to have this conversation primarily with you as it relates to next steps. I think what would be of importance to me would be to understand what is needed from our different partners to be able to actualize this effort, and in particular making sure that we both have representation. But the other thing, and I'm glad that Chief Tyndall and I think Chief Nicolai are still here. I think the other issue that we have to really address is the information that comes both from the arresting officer as well as information that probation gets, as well as the information that Matt has, and better understand the communication alignment. When I've spoken to some of the judges, they have reflected on the fact that they would like to be as informed as possible so that their options are very clear to them, and that lack of information can sometimes cause people to hesitate, and also to not feel as confident in the service the services available and or that they're making a good decision, which I understand that. And so I just want to make sure that at some point when we have this discussion, again, that we really have that communication line drawn out and that we've incorporated all of our public safety partners along the continuum. Does that make sense to you?
It does, yeah, and we can certainly work on that for the next go around. Data sharing is always tricky, but we're working on it. We're making good progress. And one thing I should announce to this group, which I think is exciting, is you're seeing a lot of the new data that we're able to produce, and I think everyone seems excited by it. I certainly am, and it's good to hear. But a lot of it is, we know behavioral health is sort of central to so much of what we do, central to so much of what we're talking about here. We just went live on September 1st, which was 4 days ago, with NetSmart on the internal side, internal county, and we're going to roll it out later on as we were able to. But with having NetSmart implemented, we're hopeful, at least I'm hopeful, that we can get better data. And also, even this morning, I had a conversation where we're getting real close to almost getting a vendor for the RMS, the records management system at the jail, and that's also going to help us get more data. So I hear loud and clear everyone happy with the additional data we're getting, wanting more data, wanting to better understand how communication flows. Absolutely get that, and we're making progress. But we still have a little bit of ways to go, but we're making progress.
And Miguel, what I would also like to request is that if we need to have a conversation relative to budget, that this item come before the board before the November budget timeframe, or at least is discussed as part of the budget hearings if that's necessary. And you'll let us know if that is.
Will do.
Great. I want to thank everybody. I know this was a very meaty set of discussions today. I really wanted to thank the staff. The amount of work and collaboration is just, it's awe-inspiring, and we're moving in a really great direction. So thank you to each and every one of you. I think as it relates to this last item, that what I'm going to ask is that we get a report back at our next reentry meeting just to see where we are, but that we do in fact have this discussion as part of budget. I also I apologize for not doing this earlier, but I wanted to introduce Dr. Day, who I think is on, she's brand new to us, and she's been here 3 weeks, and she's our Director of Custody Health. And I wanted to say welcome to your first meeting. We appreciate you being here. Thank you.
Very good.
And this is, anyway, and I find this to be one of the most productive groups that we have. We dig in, we have good discussions, and we try to make change as we go forward. So thank you for joining us, and we look forward to working with you. I want to thank all of you very much. I think our next meeting is August 19th. No, wait a minute. No, that's not right. Anyway, we have a meeting coming up at some point. We'll let you know, apparently. So thank you very much, everybody. And thanks for the great reports. And October the 21st is our next meeting. But we might actually want to, and actually, let me just say, that's perfect timing because we'll be able to talk before the budget. So we'll work with Miguel on the agenda. If anybody has particular items they'd like to raise, there were a couple that came up today that we'll put to the next meeting, but you can let Miguel or Maya in my office know. All right? Be well, wash your hands, wear your mask, stay socially distanced, and be safe. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Cindy.
Hi, are there staff still on the call? No. Commissioner Brown? Yes, hi. I just wanted to confirm that I have this in my calendar for the October meeting. So are the meetings always at 9:30 in the morning? They're not always at 9:30.